And our next award is for commercial thinning. And this goes to Mike and Liz Powell. And let's take a look at their thinning. And okay, this is their tree farm out on Bunker Creek. See there, 118 acres. They purchased this back in 1977 to be a home for them and a place to operate their log trucking business out of. And at that point, this was almost all cleared farmland in the valley bottom. And Bunker Creek runs north-south right just about through the center of this thing. After leasing out pasture for 20 years or so, they decided, nah, enough of that. Let's put this back into forest. Well, it has a few challenges. As anybody knows that has ever tried to afforest, as they say, an old pasture or especially valley bottom land that is also wet. So let's take a look at what they've done with it. You see 3 dark green patches there, and those are what we're going to look at closely here as we get to the end of the program. Those are Douglas fir plantations done in 1996 and 1997, so they're about 25 years old. We're going to look at those a little closer, but first we're going to look at what other things they've done here. This is a really challenging situation, and they've done some very interesting things with it. So let's take a look at that. You can see that sign that these folks have been before us before with awards. So the sign on the left was for tree planting, and you're going to see they planted a lot of trees, and it's a war, to try to raise trees in a grass environment and in wet ground in some places. And you can see the sign on the right that other people recognize them for their work, and what that's all about is the trees you see in the background there. That is plantings that were done under the CREP program, C-R-E-P, and I think that stands for Conservation Reserve Easement Program or something close to that. Anyway, that's a program where you sign up to allow this the riparian zone to be replanted back into species, mostly native species for a riparian zone. And in the background there you can see there's western red cedar in there. There is black cottonwood, and also valley ponderosa pine, the Willamette Valley ponderosa pine, and a couple other species that were used in that planting. So here we are, we're taking a walk through that riparian zone, and these are those CREP plantings, and they're probably 18 years old or something like that at this point. And there you see the western red cedar and the cottonwood. And here's another a little farther along. And what I want to point out here is, like I said, this is a really tough environment to get a tree going. And if you notice the white bands around the base of those trees, and that is protection from voles, and in their case also beaver trying to either kill the trees or chop them down. And this was a real tough battle, and they won that battle, but it took a lot of work to get there. Okay, so here's Bunker Creek, a valuable fish stream, and we're crossing it on their bridge here. So this runs through the middle of that protected riparian zone, been planted back to those riparian zone species. So here we get out on the other side of the riparian zone. So I thought this was really nice pasture here and kind of scenic thing. It looked like a big mountain meadow to me, but it was explained to me, Mike Powell explained to me that no, they weren't trying to preserve some pasture here. There was a reason they didn't attempt to plant this. Seems that it's sometime under about 4 feet of water, so not suitable for trees. Okay, but anything that they thought they could grow a tree on, they certainly have tried to do that, had some interesting success. So in the middle of that picture, you see Douglas fir, young Douglas fir over there, and that's where we're headed to take a look at one of those 3 stands that comprise about 20 acres of this stuff. And it was a day in October that we were out there, and that smoke in the air, forest fire smoke, and here we are. So the taller trees are, of course, 25-year-old Douglas fir. There's 3 areas of that, and it was explained to me that this cedar planting in the foreground, this is so the elevation of the ground drops as you go towards the creek, and the creek is behind us. And so that elevation is dropping, the soil is becoming more moist, and so this is a band where the Douglas fir plantings died out due to high soil moisture. So they went back in and fought another war here and have been successful to get cedar going. And anybody who tries cedar knows that it's got multiple issues. It's a great thing, and a lot of us fight that battle. And okay, so this is what they do. So this tree, Donna and Ken are standing here to give you size reference. About their neck level, about 5.5 feet off the ground, that is where once you get a cedar above that level, you've made it. You beat the deer and the elk and all the critters that want to eat them. And so again, the protection at the base for voles. And then you see the mesh netting in the center there, Vexar tubing to keep the deer from eating them up. And you can see here they won the battle on this one. Now, I did want to, before we move on to the Doug fir stand, I wanted to point out one more thing here. For those sites that even cedar are too wet for, some of you folks in the room here have tried Valley ponderosa pine. And this is a particularly nice patch of it here. This is out in a zone that's even too wet for western red cedar, and so they've gone to the Valley ponderosa pine. That's a really nice little patch of pine. Notice how straight, really well formed those trees are. Anyway, so a good alternative for sites that are too wet for any other conifer species. Okay, here's what we came to look at. And here's Ken for reference. Here, this is a typical tree that he's leaning on of the stand after the thinning, very representative of these stems. So Ken Wilson did this thinning, did this last year. So he, as he puts it, he weeded this forest. He selected out the poorer formed trees, got the spacing down. This was originally planted at about 430 stems to the acre, and he took it down somewhere in the 200 stems per acre range. And then we're going to move on here. This is another shot, same stuff, a little farther over, and you can see the stump in the middle there. That's typical of what you see. And here is an example of one of the cut stumps, and it's very typical, and you've probably seen this before. You know, first 15 years this tree grows pretty rapid clip, starts to slow down, slows down. It's getting still nice wood, real nice wood, but then about the last 5 years you get these nearly paper thin growth rings. So yes, definitely time to thin them out. Okay, so there's a final shot of another spot there, very typical of the whole thing. Anyway, very nice thinning, very well managed group of 20-year-old Doug fir. So with that, Mike and Liz, would you come forward, please?